Barakatay Hawa, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakha Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is An Enemy Have Done This. And pretty much this is centered around some information that I've been going through. And I'll share with you, brothers out there, a few sisters. Excuse me. And pretty much it has to do with the Herodian line and the Edomites that were ruling, during a time prior to our Lord Yahushua coming on the scene, and during his time and even after his time. And something known as the Herodian dynasty, which are nothing more than Edomites that claim to be Jews. Now, the scripture in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, we always use that to point to them, which it does, but it's, dealing with Jake, with those Israelites that were calling themselves Jews, but they really weren't because they weren't behaving as Israelites. But also, it could apply to the Herods and Esau too, that's calling themselves Israelites. They're not calling themselves Israelites, but you know what I'm talking about, the JEWs. But it's mostly, dealing with the Israelites that are calling themselves Israelites but are not behaving like Israelites. So this whole dynasty of Herodians that got into these prominent positions, they got into the prominent positions by way of, deceit, as they always do. That is their nature. That's what makes them float. That's what moves them and motivates them. So we're going to start off here in the book of Matthew 13 and 27. This is about the parable of the sower seed. I'm sorry, not the parable of the sower seed. This is the parable of the tares and the wheat. And when you get a chance, you could read through it. But I just want to get to this point here. In Matthew 13:27, it says, So the servants of the household came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed, which are the Israelites, in the field, in thy field, meaning in the world, your world of Israel? From whence then hath it tares? Now the tares are fake wheat. The wheat, they're tares, but they look like wheat, but they're not. All right. It says, He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. Hence, where we get the name for the lesson, which actually came to me prior to me starting. I was looking for a title, and then this popped in my head. And I looked it up. I said, this is perfect. So he said unto me, An enemy have done this. Who's that enemy? The Edomites, which are identified as the sons and daughters of the spiritual demon Satan. An enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Because Herod, who they call Herod the Great, and there were a line of Herods. That's why when you read through the scriptures, it's kind of hard to identify who's who unless you know the time period and exactly what Herod it was. Just like when you read about the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, it's hard to identify who's who unless you know which Ptolemy it's speaking about or which Seleucid, especially when it comes to the Ptolemaic dynasty, because they were all called Ptolemies, and I believe there were 13 of them altogether. So he said, and the reason why you had tares that looked like wheat was because Herod, who they called Herod the Great, whose father was Antipater, he pretty much looked like a Jake, because his mother was Miriam. I'm sorry, his mother was Cypros. His mother was Cypros, which was an Arabian princess who his father Antipater married. And Herod, the so-called Great, he married Miriam, which was a princess from among the Hasmonean dynasty. And even back then, when you had the Hasmonean dynasty, even they were going off, because when I was doing the research, I was trying to find a list of the rulers of the Hasmonean kings, and I found that they had a damn queen in there. Jake just stay going off, man. But anyways, but he said, nay, least we gather up the tares. While you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Why? Because some of the wheat look like the tares, and then you have, those that you might think might be, heathens, but they're really Israelites. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, gather you together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. That's why right now the Lord is using the sifting agent of the word to sift out those that are from those that are not. And the word is what's gathering Israel, but right now is only gathering the elect of the nation of Israel. So let's read this verse again, get another precept, and then just get into it. He said unto them, an enemy have done this. These are the Herodians and the Edomites in general that have mingled themselves among Jake. And some of them look like Jake, but they're really Edomites. And there's going to be a sad day of reckoning coming. Sad day for some, and a joyous day for others. And especially for those that know that they're Israelites and look at an individual because he looks like an Edomite or of another nation and look down upon him. But then they'll give credence and palm and slapping high fives, inside joke, to somebody that looks like them, but that dude is a straight up Edomite or of another nation. So let's get into some more. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy 32:26. I said, this is the Most High speaking, I will scatter them into corners, meaning Israel will be scattered into corners. The corners are a representation of these different, the situation or the curses that Jake is found in, especially in the ghettos, the hood, the barrios, the shanty towns, the favelas, and wherever around the world Jake is, they're always in the worst parts of the city, which are known as the ghettos. Now, the small hats pretty much speak about the ghettos of Europe that they were in, but those ghettos were self-imposed. When you self-impose something on yourself, matter of fact, let's get that real quick. Self-impose meaning. Let's see if anything comes up. Self-imposed, of a task or circumstance imposed on oneself, not by an external force, meaning you did this. When you read the book, excuse me, The 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler, he even goes into that in his book, that these small hats, pretty much these so-called ghettos that they were in, were pretty much self-imposed because they had to try to make themselves look like the people of the scriptures. That's why they always have to try to do something. That's why the women, do the things that they do. Now they have the wigs that they wear. We were speaking about, Apostle Tar was speaking to us about that. I don't really fully remember exactly what he was telling us about that, but we know that at one time they were using that to act like if they was the daughters of Israel, that their hair was smited, but they shaved that off. But there's a reason for it. But like I said, at this moment, I can't really recall it. So Lord's will, when I get a chance, I'll look it up. All right, so these were self-imposed. And that's why it says here, I said I will scatter them into corners, meaning the Israelites, the true Israelites. I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. And you could read Psalms the 83rd chapter, and then also Numbers the 23rd chapter, which shows you that we would not be recognized among the nations. All right. The only recognition we get is as being niggas, spics, spooks, wetbacks, tonto, so on and so forth. But as far as being the people of the Most High, we don't get that recognition from them because that was stripped away from us. That's why when you try to tell a Jake that they're Israelite, or a JEW, they'll say, I ain't no damn JEW. I ain't begot no weapons. Inside joke, because of that. So it says, were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy. Who's the enemy? Esau. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries, which is who? Esau. Another word for adversary is what? Or adversaries is what? Satan or Satans. All right? Lest their adversaries should behave themselves what? Strangely. How are they behaving themselves strangely? Because they got on a cover over them, acting as if they are the people of the Most High when they're not. At least they should say, our hand is high and the Lord have not done all this, right? Because they feel that they put themselves in that position. They think the Most High is with them. Psalms the 50th chapter tells us that. Because pretty much the Lord ain't really done nothing to them. And it seems like they're blessed because they got the world's riches. They think the Most High is on their side. Now, when we look up this word strangely, the word there is nakar, which is the word that is, I say about 90% of the time, maybe a little more, it refers to the nations, the actual heathens, but every once in a while it refers to the Israelites, depending on the context of the scripture. In this case, is dealing with acting strange outside of who you really are. So when Edomites call themselves Israelites and act like they're the Israelites, they're behaving strangely because they're stepping outside of their actual nationality. Now, when we look up the word nakar, right, there was something in here that caught my attention. I'm not sure. It says to recognize, acknowledge, know, respect, discern, regard. Let me see. To be acquainted with. To make oneself known. Right here. To act or treat as a foreign or strange. Disguise, misconstrue. So that's what they've done. They're acting as if they're something that they're not. They're disguising themselves, misconstrue. To disguise oneself. There you go. So they've been disguising themselves as the people of the Most High, but they're not. And now that the truth is out, what's happening? They're starting to push this anti-Sem sentiment on the world. And through this WEF, they're pushing to stop, this fake disinformation, which is the true information that's exposing them. So they want to stop everything that exposes them, because the kitchen is getting too hot, and them Amalekite sausages are getting fried up, and they're not liking the flames of that fire. Okay, so let's get into it. This is John Hyrcanus the First, Johanan, or Yawachanan. Now, when you go into these different names, Hyrcanus, I believe, was a surname. Ptolemy, a surname. Seleucus, a surname. Caesar, a surname. The different names of these different, those different Assyrian kings and different Babylonian kings and so on and so forth, they all had titles. They had their names, but they also had titles. Hyrcanus, I believe, was a surname or a title, right? Which a surname is a last name, but it was a title. Now, this John Hyrcanus was John Hyrcanus the First. He was the one that forcibly converted the Edomites to what they call Judaism, so-called Judaism. All right. Now, I had something highlighted in here, but I kind of messed up when I kind of tapped up there, but that's all right. We'll figure it out. We're going to read a little bit of this and try to jump around and get the main points. I put all of these in the description box. I even gave some bonus info in there, so brothers that like to research can actually get into it. But I'm trying to. Okay, this is where it was at. Let me just get this real quick. All right, boom. Here we go. So let's read a little bit of this. So then you had also John Hyrcanus II. John Hyrcanus II was a pushover. He was a puppet. So when you read about John Hyrcanus, you think it's talking about the same person, but no, it's not. John Hyrcanus I was a strong leader that kicked Esau in the ass. John Hyrcanus II, he was a puppet. And Antipater would have, had him dangling on puppet strings. So when you read about him dangling on puppet strings, it's not talking about this John Hyrcanus. It's talking about the second. All right, it says high priest, prince of the Hasmonean family, born about 175, died 104. He was a wise and just ruler and a skillful warrior. And he was, I keep doing it, of the line of Simon Maccabees. As a young man, he distinguished himself as a general in war against the Syrian general Sendibius, whom he defeated. That John was given the surname Hyrcanus. See, so this was a surname that was given to him on account of his victory. Is a tradition to which grants significance when his father, right? Well, you know what? It says is a tradition to which Gratz and others attribute historical significance. When his father, Simon Maccabeus, was assassinated at Jericho by his son-in-law, Ptolemy, John succeeded in escaping from those sent by Ptolemy to murder him also. All right. And then, he became the successor. The people joined with him. Israel joined with him. Let's see. He had wars with the Syrians. He was allied to the Romans. All right, so let's go to the forcibly converted. All right, so he also had wars with the Samaritans. No, Samaritans. Is it Samaria? Yeah, Samaritans. Out of Samaria. He destroyed the temple. I guess eventually they built it back up. I'm not really up on that history. I will have to go back and check it out. It says, after that conquering of the Samaritans, which were heathens that were calling themselves Israelites, after victoriously ending the war in Samaria, he proceeded to subdue the Edomites, always a menace to the southern parts of his domains. With funds which he is said to have obtained from David's sepulchre, he hired foreign troops, dismantled Adorah and Marissa, the strong places of Edom, and forced the Edomites to accept the Jewish religion and submit to circumcision. So he forced them to do it by force. That doesn't mean that they're Israelites. He just forced the laws that we have upon these devils. Because he was trying to get them to stop the raids and all of that happening, in the southern parts of Israel. It says this is the first instance of forcible conversion in Jewish history, right? It says, in this, Hyrcanus allowed his zeal for the Jewish cause or for the Yahweh cause to lead him to take a step which later wrought harm. Why? Because eventually you had the Herodian dynasty or Herods. They pretty much would use that as a form of revenge. And this is why when we read in Ezekiel 25 and 35, pretty much that's how they revenged themselves. Every time Esau came against Israel, it was always about a revenge about something. Whether it was the birthright, whether it was the blessing, whether it was the slaying of Agag, whether it was the hanging of Haman and his sons and and their family. It was always something that had to do with vengeance. It says, for the Edomites belonged to the family of the Herodians, who were to bring about the ruin of the Hasmoneans, right? Because the last Hasmonean ruler that sat on the throne was Antigonus II. All right, which we're going to read a little bit about him. It says the Samaritans, who still held their strongly fortified metropolis of Samaria, were the part. Okay, so that goes into the Samaritans. And eventually he kicked Herod in the ass. But eventually Herod, what happened was he took his forces. No, I'm sorry. That was I'm jumping the gun. This is still dealing with John Hyrcanus the first. All right, so you can read the rest of this when you get a chance. What I got here is a list of Hasmonean and Herodian rulers. Right, this was the Hasmonean rebel leaders, which was Judas Maccabees number 1, and then Jonathan Maccabees, which is number 2, which were sons, 2 of the 5 sons of Matthias, which was their father. Hasmonean high priests and kings. So it says Jonathan Maccabeus, Simon Maccabeus. See, John Hyrcanus the first. See, he was the son of Simon Maccabees. Then you had Aristobulus the first, also king. That's the line. Alexander Jannaeus, also king, right? So this is the line of the Levites that were high priests and also kings. Then here you have Alexandra Salome, queen. Jake be going off, man. Then you have here John Hyrcanus II. This was the puppet that Antipater had dangling on puppet strings. He was high priest from 76 to 66 and 63 to 40 BC. Governor of the people 63 to 57 BC, ethnarch of Judea 47 to 40 BC. All right. Then you had Aristobulus II, 66 to 63 BC, and then you had Antigonus 40 to 37 BC. All right. Then after this time period, this is when the Herodians came in and they stepped into the shoes of the Hasmonean leaders. This is why Herod eventually married Miriam, because of something that he did. Because Jake was always leery of these devils, but he had helped his father, and him had helped, Jake in certain instances, but they didn't do it sincerely. They did it because they saw opportunities. One thing you're gonna know about Esau, that's why it says never trust thine enemy, is that they do things based off of opportunity. They always have ulterior motives. Whatever they do, they always have ulterior motives. They're never doing anything for the benefit of the people. If it seems like they're doing something for the benefit of the people, it's because they see an opportunity to enhance themselves. When you read about Haman, he was helping the Medo-Persian Empire. Why? Because he was looking for an opportunity to insert the Edomites in there. You can read about that in the rest of the books of Esther. So you have Antipater the Idumean, procreator of Judea, Herod the Great, and he gives you the different. He was a governor of Galilee, tetrarch of Galilee, and eventually elected king of all Judea by the Roman Senate in 40 BC. So it says he reigned from 37 to 4 BC. Then these are his sons that ruled after him. Then he had daughters in here. All right. So just so you know, that's also in the description box. Now we got Antigonus Mattathias with the Hebrew name Mattathiah, which this was Antigonus II. All right. But before we get to that, let's go into it. It says, let me see something. Okay. It says, the last Hasmonean king of Judea died 37 BC. And there's a reason why. He was the second son of Aristobulus II, and together with his father, was carried prisoner to Rome by Pompey in 63 BC. Both escaped in 57. And returned to Palestine after Aristobulus' unsuccessful attempt to oppose the Roman forces there, right? Because he didn't like the fact that the Romans were taxing the hell out of Jake. So he rebelled, but he didn't get too far. The Senate considered the king so little to be feared that it decreed his liberty. Antigonus, however, was not so ready to surrender ancestral rights. While his older brother Alexander was planning to secure them, he remained quiet. But on Alexander's death, Antigonus considered himself exclusive heir of the Hasmonean dynasty, which he is, and rightly judging his uncle Hyrcanus which this was Hyrcanus II, to be a puppet in the hands of the Idumean Antipater. All right. He set to work zealously to assert himself. So let's jump down here. It says crowned king. But what I want to get to is besieged in Jerusalem. All right. So it says Antigonus behaved most manfully during the siege, but after the final assault, when no hope was left, he fell entreating at the feet of the Roman general Sosius, who brutally mocked his grief. By dubbing him Antigone after Sophocles' tearful heroine. At the suggestion of Herod, who was afraid to allow Antigonus to be taken to Rome in the triumphal train of Mark Antony, right? Because, they were going to put him on trial, and if they would have found, if they would have questioned him, they would have found out that he was the rightful heir. So Herod feared that. So it says, lest he should dare successfully plead for his rights. This last king of the Hasmonean house was taken to Antioch and there fell beneath the executioner's axe. It was the first time that the Romans had ever thus put a king to death. The last king of pure Yehoiadim blood fell before the intrigues of the first king of Judea, not entirely of Yehoiadim birth, because he was an Edomite. Herod was an Edomite. All right. So it says the last king of pure Yehoiadim blood, that was Hyrcanus II. So when he fell, this is how Herod, the so-called great, got into power. Now we have Antipater, which is the father of Herod. Father of Herod I, died 43 BC. He was the son of Antipas, a convert to Judaism. These were the ones that were forcibly converted to so-called Judaism, who was governor of Idumea under the reigns of Alexander, Jannaeus, and his queen, Dowager Alexandra, and rendered himself serviceable to the Jewish rulers through his connections with his former congeners of Arabia, Patria. Antipater, who seems to have succeeded his father as governor of Idumea, had reason to fear that King Aristobulus II would not retain him in his position. He therefore tried his utmost to dethrone Aristobulus. Right, he wanted Aristobulus out of the way, who was sitting on the throne at the time, and to restore the weak Hyrcanus II. See, he wanted him because who would be an easy tool in his hands to the throne, which was rightfully his. So pretty much he was using this individual to set himself up as a king of Israel. But eventually what happened was his son ended up being the king, which was Herod I. With this view, Antipater tried to persuade Hyrcanus, who was not only of a peaceful and kindly disposition, but altogether free from suspicion, that so he was none the wiser. He didn't know the actual what Herod really was trying to do, was trying to get up in it to be king. Antipater, that his brother was plotting his death in order to secure himself upon the throne. Hyrcanus at first refused credence to Antipater, but finally allowed himself to be gained over. Antipater, who felt no attachment for Judaism or the Yehoiadim state, and who stood ready to sacrifice their interests in order to serve his own ends, see, never trust thine enemies, had made previous arrangements with Aretas, an Arabian chief, to give his help to Hyrcanus in return for a large sum of money, blah, 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 blah. So there was let's see, Hyrcanus and Antipater. I'm trying to find, the main points. So let's read some of this here. Changes of policy. When his personal interests did not conflict with those of the Jews, the crafty Idumea was of great service to them. See, this is what he did. Thus, after the battle of Pharsalia, he was quick to take sides with Caesar, and latter's friendship to the Jews was mainly due to the services rendered him by Antipater in Egypt. So, in other words, Caesar, because of Antipater, he gave no service to Israel because of this devil. Right? Nominally under the authority of Hyrcanus, Caesar rewarded Antipater by appointing him governor Epipotos, Epitropos of Judea in the year 47 BC. And what was of still greater advantage to Antipater, Hyrcanus was made ethnarch instead of Antigonus, son of Aristobulus II. Because right in the midst of his activity and rising success, Antipater was poisoned, 43 BC, so he was out the picture. But he had set up his two sons, in power, while feasting with Hyrcanus by the hireling of certain Malik. Right, it says, however, no good, however, came to Judea by his death, right? For the power of the Idumean house was not annihilated thereby. Why? Because his sons were still around. And his sons, particularly Herod, carried on the work of the destruction of Judea, because that's what it was about. Because they wanted the throne. So much was this the case that the hatred of the Jews concentrated itself mainly against the son. And legend has little to say of actual founder of the Herodian dynasty. A fragment of a legend concerning the life of Antipater has, however, been preserved by Julius Africanus. According to this writer, Idumean robbers attacked Ascalon. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so Herod the Great. Right, I'm not sure if I marked anything here. Okay, execution of Hyrcanus. We're just going to read a little bit of this. So it says, King of Judea, 40 to 4 BC, founder of the Herodian dynasty, born at about 73 BC, son of Antipater, and consequently of Idumean origin. It is said that when he was a boy of 12, an Essene named Manahem predicted that he would reign over Judea indeed. Just trying to get down to the nitty gritty. See, betrothed to Miriam, this was a Hasmonean woman, princess, that he married to, and his sons were pretty much, they call it half-breeds, but they weren't half-breeds, they were Edomites that just happened to have an Israelite mother. All right? Then it said, elected king by the Roman Senate. The year 40 was a turning point in Herod's life. With the help of the Parthians, who in that year overran Syria, Antigonus was proclaimed king of Palestine, which is the second. Phasael was taken into an ambuscade and forced to commit suicide. Herod, escaping a similar fate by flight, after passing through the great hardships and greater dangers, he succeeded in reaching the fortress of Masada. That's why he set up that whole thing at Masada, a fortress. And that's where he would flee when there was danger. And this is where Jake ran to at the time. After 70 AD, or around the time of 70 AD, when he left his family in the care of his brother Joseph. Just trying to, skip through to get to the main parts. Excuse me. It says, after a siege of several months, because Antigonus and Herod were at constant war. And pretty much what happened at one point was Antigonus had the upper hand, and then Herod had to flee. And when he fled, he was watching him. And then what Antigonus did was he split his army. Some went one way, some went the other way, and that's when Herod attacked and got him. After a siege of several months, Jerusalem fell, probably in July, into the hands of the Romans. For several days, the troops, unrestrained, indulged in murdering and pillaging, and Herod, to stop these horrors, had to pay out of his private fortune large sums to the legionnaires. Antigonus was carried away captive to Sosius, to Antioch, where by Antony's orders, instigated by Herod, he was executed. So that was the end of the Hasmonean line and the beginning of the Edomites ruling. All right. It says, during the civil war between Antony and Octavian, Herod, who had helped his protector Antony, returning. So you get the idea, And this dude was a real piece of something. And this, when I was reading some of this history, it reminds me of the Borgias, the Borgias. These people, they might even been the Borgia family or the Borgia family. And like I said, you have other information. This is Hyrcanus II, which was the puppet, and you could read about him. Then I didn't read this. I just happened to have it. So this is a bonus if brothers want to read. And then this is Miriam the First, which was the Hasmonean princess that Herod married. I didn't read any of this either. I just kind of found it. So now let's go to Revelation real quick. Revelation chapter 12. Salaki, I know I went through, some information that really didn't bring too many scriptures out, but just wanted to go through some of this history. Revelation 12:1, the woman, look at that, Israel. So they know that this woman is Israel, not Mary. Because Abu Kamar came down to 34th and 7th, didn't announce that he was Abu. He came there with a picture, called it the Virgen Guadalupe, which said that, I believe that's, so he's a real devil too. And I said, I believe that, that in Revelation, it speaks about, the woman with the 12 stars, and that's Mary. No, it's not Mary. It's talking about the nation of Israel. And there's precepts to prove that the stars are a representation of the Israelites. And there's a reason why there's 12 of them, And Pastor was like, pretty much through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemal Shai, had him in his hand like silly putty, But yeah, this is the great Abu Kamar. You come on the comment board and, tell you what it is and what it ain't. He ain't have too much to say that day. Revelation 12:1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. The woman is Israel. The sun represents wisdom. And the moon under her feet. The moon represents understanding. And upon her head, a crown of 12 stars. Those 12 stars represent the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. By this time, the northern kingdom had been gone, so there was how many tribes there? 3 tribes left. And then you had some of the sprinkle of the other tribes around, but there were predominantly 3 tribes. You had the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Levi. And then you had some of the other tribes in there, but predominantly it was them 3. And you have to understand that history to understand why this book of Revelation is written and what it's saying here, especially in particularly in Revelation 12. It says, and she being with child, dealing with the nation of Israel, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered, because Israel was looking to be delivered from under the hands of the Romans. They were being oppressed by the Romans. Let's go to Matthew 11. And then another precept came to mind. Let me get it real quick, Lord's will, I don't forget. Okay, so let's go back. So Matthew chapter 11 and verse 11. It says, for verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist. But remember, he fell out the truth according to the ISUPK. He didn't fall out the truth, man. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. So Jake was catching hell back then. So they were looking to be delivered. So Isaiah 65, and I believe it's Isaiah, it's 66. It says, let's start here, 666. Isaiah 66 and 6. A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies. And the Lord is going to recompense. Yahweh, Bashem Yahushua, is going to recompense. It's going to recompense vengeance upon Esau and the other nations. So it says, before she travailed, meaning the Israelites, before the Israelites travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. So the Israelites, even before we went through all of the hardships that we went through, we were already delivered by the Savior Yahushua. Because that goes back all the way to the beginning of time. Because remember, the Lord was already prophesied to come to deliver us before the world was even created, before the world even was thought of or made. And when we look up the word travailed, these are the pains that a woman goes through when she's about to give birth. Chawal. To twist, whirl, dance, writhe, fear, tremble, travail. Right. Because that's what happens. A woman, when she's in pain, with the baby, she's trying to move and turn and twist and trying to figure out what she can do or what position she can get in so that pain can either subside or go. Travail, painful or laborious effort. See? So she's trying to get some type of relief. And that relief comes when the child is born. All right, so it says, before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child, right? Because it was already prophesied. So when Yahushua came on the scene, that was the time when the beginning of the deliverance of Israel will come. This is why the apostles asked Yahushua, will thou at this time, restore again the kingdom to Israel? Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such a thing? Or who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to brought forth in one day? And the answer to that is no. There's a process that has to go down. Even Ezra asked the angel, look, why can't all the people that are supposed to be born just be born, and then that way the time can speed up? He said, ask a woman, why can't she just give birth of 10 sons or all her sons at one time, but one at a time? Because there's a process that the Lord has. The scriptures say, wake not my love until he please. So there's a way that the Lord wants everything done. It says, or shall a nation be born at once? The answer to that is no. For as soon as Zion travailed, see, she brought forth her children. So that's what it's dealing with in the book of Revelation. It says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Why? Because the Romans were putting hell upon Jake. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth? Saith the Lord, shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb? Saith the Lord, saith thy power? And the answer to that is no. Because the king was born 2,000 years ago, and this caused a great controversy and a great strife and great stress upon Herod and the Herodian dynasty, because they had just recently, not too long before, they had taken over the kingdom and became rulers. The dude was so bugged out that he even killed his wife, Miriam, some of his own children. He was just killing every goddamn body. Satan was jumping on everybody. All right, and you could read on more to this. This is good, but I'll get back to this. So Revelation 12 and 2. This Revelation 12 and 1 and 2. This is talking about the Israelites. Now verse 3 is very interesting. It says here the red dragon, Satan, which is not talking about the spiritual demon Satan, but the people that represent Satan on the earth, which are the Edomites. And there's a reason why it says that it's red. Satan is a man of color. The spiritual demon Satan, the angels on the left-hand side, they're all men of color. They ain't no so-called white-looking people. The physical counterpart on the earth are the red people, the original red people, which are the Edomites. The name Edom goes back to the Hebrew Adawam, which means red, because they are the red people. That's why it identifies this dragon or this powerful force of a creature to be red, because when you put the whole conglomeration of all of these different empires that rule, the 7 empires of Esau that rule, beginning with the Greeks, and you connect them with their allies, the other European Edomite nations, they're a force to be reckoned with. Who was able to make power with the beast? Elder Yashwamba, I'm not sure if that was a recent video or a re-upload that he just put up, was go deep into the history of that. I suggest you go and watch that video. Very good, informative video. Is you hungry? Go get some food over there. It says, but this part here, this red dragon, which are the Edomites, are also connected to, let's read, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads, which is talking about the whole empire of the Edomites, dealing with a recent video. Okay, the water. This is the the nation of the Edomites, at this time the Roman Empire was in rulership, but the Herodian dynasty was a part of that because they're all Edomites. It says here, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. What was his tail? His tail was a representation, first and foremost, of the Roman military that eventually came against Jake, and also of the Herodian dynasty, in particular Herod, the so-called Great, or Herod the First, and did cast him to the earth, because eventually they were casted to the earth during the time of 70 AD. And this chapter here goes into the history, briefly, of what took place after that great falling away that the Apostle Paul spoke of. After the prophecy that Yahushua said, when you see the abomination which causeth desolation, stand where it ought not, then flee out of Jerusalem. Now we read here, and the dragon stood before the woman. See, that's the Roman Empire, but also who? Who was the main character that did this? Herod, the Idumean. And the dragon stood before the woman, Israel, which was ready to be delivered, dealing with Yahushua, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So the Herods, or the Herodian dynasty, is also, or are also, a part of that red dragon, because they're all Edomites. There's a reason why it's called red. In another scripture, it calls it scarlet. Scarlet is just another fancy way of saying red. Edom, Adawam, red. All right, so it's all a part of the same system. They're all Edomites. They're all red. Now, let's go from there. Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 2, and let's start at 1. This is the history of what happened, or a recounting of what happened. See, this is just like a brief, in Revelation 12, is just a brief summary, so to speak, of what took place. In Matthew, the 2nd chapter, it goes into it even more in depth. All right, then when we go to, let me just get this scripture so I don't forget it. I believe this is it. Just bear with me 1 second. Boom, there we go. So, the visit of the Magi, all right? Now, the Magi were the wise men, which were Israelites, that came to Jerusalem to see the birth of Yahushua, because they saw the ship up in the sky. They called it a star. It was a ship, and they followed it to see where it was, so that they can come to the king, because they thought that everybody knew, because they saw it, they was coming, and that's why they asked Herod, where is he that's born king of the Jews? Because they just knew that everybody knew about it, because they knew about it, but they wasn't up on it. But what did Herod do? He took that information that they told him, and then he summoned the Pharisees and them to show him in the scripture. He didn't know, and to show him in the scriptures, or to show him proof that the Messiah was supposed to come. Where is he supposed to be born at? And then what did he do? They take information. That's what the devil does, like vocab. They take the information. They don't care about learning what we know, so that they can say, oh, you know what? You're right about that, and I'm wrong. What they're doing is they collect information. As they do, they put it in categories, categorial, as it speaks about in Revelation 12. And they put it in a database, so to speak, so they can know, okay, when they come up with this, we'll hit them with this. When they come up with that, we'll hit them with this. When they come up with this, we'll hit them with that. The old tactics of divide and conquer. Learn your enemy, and then find a way to go around what they teach, and make them and force them to accept what we believe, but gaslight them, make them question, make them think, throw a little bit here, a little bit there, make them doubt what they're into. Then, maybe we really are the Israelites, or maybe everybody could really be saved. That's what the devil does. What did he do with Eve? He came to her with truth and lies. and he gaslighted her. He threw a little something here, and then he already knew what she was gonna say, so she threw something back at him, and he used that and threw it back at her. And what happened? Eventually, he got her, and that's what the devil does. So it says, now when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen a star in the east and are come to worship him. Worship him. Uh-oh. Anyways, when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled. Now, why was he troubled? Because he is the king. Remember, he just, not too long before this, he just slayed the last heir of the throne. And now he's like, what the hell? What the fuck? What the fuck? I got it. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? So now he has to do some more scrambling to find out who this individual is that is threatening his throne. It says, and all Jerusalem with him, because you even had Sambos in Israel that was all perplexed, like, wait a minute, he's the king. Herod's the king. But then you had others that couldn't stand Herod because they knew the real deal. It says, when he had gathered all the chief priests, listen good, all the chief priestesses, as a high priest Ariah used to say, priestesses, and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Yahushua should be born. Why? Because they needed to know. He didn't know. So what did he do? He asked them information, and they provided him with the information. And what is he going to do? He's going to use that for later, for his purpose to destroy those children, those children at the time, from the information that he got from Israelites. That's what the devil does, man. When you're going to learn that? It says, and they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophets, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, or Yahweh, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel, which is Yahushua. Then Herod, when he had privately called these wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. What is he doing again? Gathering information. Esau is a gatherer of information, not for the purpose of learning what you know so that they can be enlightened, but to use it for a later date, ulterior motives. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. Why? Oh, yeah, I want to worship him too. No, you don't. You want to kill him because he is a threat. And when you read the history of this madman, he went on a tangent, killing his wife, killing some of his children, some of the heirs. I mean, he was just going bucket wild. It says, and when you have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. See, he's talking to the wise men, but they were none the wiser because they're thinking, okay, no problem. We'll let you know once we find him. Because they didn't know what was going on. It says, when they had heard when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star or the ship, the chariot, which they saw in the east, went before them. It went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. Right. So it guided them to where Yahushua was. And his Joe Pesci's voice. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck do you mean I'm funny? So like, when they saw the star or the ship, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Yeah, because that ship led them. It guided them all the way to where Yahushua was at. And Jerusalem, why were they, where they were at? Because Jerusalem was full. Because people were getting ready to celebrate the Passover. It says, and when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Uh-oh. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. It says, and being warned, listen good, and being warned of the Most High in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. It's so that's why he wanted, that's why he wanted us to reveal to him where he was at, because they didn't know. They were going to go right back and let him know, but the Lord said, no, don't tell him shit. That sneaky slide devil. The flight to Egypt. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. So the angel, when you read the first and the second chapter, kept appearing to Joseph in dreams. You see, when he talked to him and told him all these things, these were dreams and visions that while he was sleeping, that the angel was showing him. Do this and do that and do this. When he came to the wise men, came to them in dreams and told them, do this and do that, or don't do this or don't do that, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. See? So he broke it down for him plainly, which showed you from the point that the devil spoke, what he said, his words were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. So he wanted to kill him, but he knew he couldn't tell him that he wanted to kill him. So he had to use guile and deception until he was able to get to the child, and then he would have killed him. But it's not possible. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, out of Egypt have I called my son. It says, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, because he waited. See, this devil was patient, and he waited. And he waited 2 long years. No, you just made that up. It don't say it was 2 years. See, what precept is that, brother? It don't say it was 2 years. It said, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under. Why did he try to, it was a baby, newborn. Why did he start killing from 2 years old and under? Because he saw that he was mocked. They didn't come to him, so it was 2 years past. Then he started doing that, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. See? Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, in Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. And there were a lot of Benjaminites that got slayed in this at that time, because the sons of Rachel was 2 of them, Joseph and Benjamin. So you had a lot of Benjaminite male children or boys that were killed. And that goes true to the prophecy in Jeremiah 31:15. Thus saith the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. And it was bitter weeping. Because imagine that, all of those babies, you don't know how many babies, it doesn't say how many sons, heirs, were destroyed at that time. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. And this shows you that blood is nothing to these devils. Doesn't matter if you're a baby, an old person, a young person, a woman, an old woman. Doesn't matter. These devils are bloodthirsty. And this maniac, Herod the First, he was a maniac, a bloodthirsty maniac. So it says, but when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. See, again, another dream. When you go back to the first chapter, it was another dream. It says, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea, so let's look up Archelaus. He was one of the sons of Herod. Archelaus. prince of the people, a son of Herod the Great by Malthus, the Samaritan woman. He and his brother Antipas were brought up with a certain private man in Rome, right? Because you know they were doing like everybody did back then. That was royalty. You know, they had tutors and governors. After the death of his father, he ruled as ethnarch over Judea, Samaria, and Idumea, with the exception of the cities of Gaza, Gadara, and Hippo. The Jews and the Samaritans have accused him at Rome of tyranny. He was banished by the Emperor Augustus to Vienna to the Allobroges and died there. All right, so this is one of the devils of the Herodian dynasty. And we showed you the list here. You can go through the list here. The real heirs and kings and priests, high priests of Israel, the Hasmoneans, and the fake ones down here. Herod, then you have Phasael, Pheroras, Herod, Archelaus, you know, so on and so forth. So it says, but when he had heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea and in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid. Matter of fact, let's look up the word Herod. They say it means hero. It says the name of a royal family that flourished among the Jews in the times of Yahushua and the apostles. Herod the Great was the son of Antipater of Idumea, appointed king of Judea BC 40 by the Roman Senate at the suggestion of Antony and with the consent of Octavian. He at length overcame the great opposition which the country made to him and took possession of the kingdom BC 37, right? And he had Antigonus II put to death, who was a rightful heir, who was a rightful king, should I say, not heir, he was king. And after the battle of Actium, he was confirmed by Octavian, whose favor he ever enjoyed. He was brave and skilled in war, learned and sagacious, right? But also extremely suspicious and cruel. Oh, check that out. Hence, he destroyed the entire royal family of Hasmoneans, put to death many of the Jews that opposed his government, and proceeded to kill even his dearly beloved wife Miriam of the Hasmonean line and his 2 sons she had borne him. By these acts of bloodshed, and especially by his love and imitation of Roman customs and institutions, and by the burdensome taxes imposed upon his subjects, he so alienated the Jews that he was unable to regain their favor by his splendid restoration of the temple and other acts of magnificence. He died in the 70th year of his age, the 37th year of his reign, the 4th before the Dionysian era. In his closing years, John the Baptist and Yahushua were born. Matthew narrates that he commanded all male children under 2 years old in Bethlehem to be slain. All right, then you got Herod, Antipas. These are all sons of his. Sons and sons, sons and, his sons and their sons, and you know the rest. All right. So it says he was afraid to go thither, notwithstanding this is dealing with Joseph, was afraid to go because Archelaus was there. Being warned of the Most High in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee, and he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. And then if you type in Herod, it'll give you all the different scriptures where you have the Herods. Now this Herodian here, salute Herodian, my kinsman. This was an Israelite that happened to be called Herodian. All right, and these were Israelites here. Everybody else from Matthew to Acts, these were Edomites. All right, and you could read about it, and then in order for you to make sense of who's who, you have to know. When you read this chapter, this is talking about so-and-so, and you read that chapter, it's talking about so-and-so, it's talking about Agrippa, it's talking about this guy or that guy or the other. Because there's a bunch of them, the whole mess of them, as you can see here in this list. Antipater the Idumean, his father was Antipas. Herod the Great, he had other brothers. These were the rulers, the fake rulers of the kingdom of Israel, at that time. So with that, it says, an enemy have done this. I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say shalom. And Salaki, I didn't even look into the scriptures that you brothers were posting. Salaki for that. Just kind of locked into the lesson itself. Shalom to the elect and deaf to the rest.